How much of your paycheck goes to rent before you've even decided what you want to spend it on?
Not how much you think goes to rent, how much actually goes.
I'm not talking about the percentage your landlord told you was normal. I'm talking about what's left after.
Hey, I'm Jordan.
And I need to be honest about something. I spent years paying $1,600 a month for an apartment I didn't even like that much. A one-bedroom, beige walls, a kitchen so small I couldn't open the oven and the refrigerator at the same time. A one-bedroom. And I told myself it was fine. I deserved it. I worked hard. I remember sitting in my car, not my apartment, my car, in a parking garage downtown. February, cold enough that my breath fogged the windows, and I was looking at my bank account on my phone. I had $214, not until next Friday. And I thought, I'm doing everything right. I have the apartment, I have the car, I'm not buying stupid stuff. Why am I still here? That question almost broke something in me, because the answer wasn't what I wanted to hear. The answer was, I was working hard inside a system I had built to keep me exactly where I was. And the most expensive part of that system was the roof over my head. Here's what I've come to believe. Most finance advice is afraid to talk about housing. Because housing is personal. It's where you sleep. It's where you feel safe. Asking someone to change that feels invasive. But I think avoiding it is worse. Because if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, you're not building wealth. You're treading water. Before I go further, hold something for me. Why does the same person who saves $500 a month when they make $45,000 suddenly save nothing when they make $65,000? Think about that. The answer is not willpower, and it's not lattes. Chapter 1. The Spreadsheet That Lied. I had a roommate once. His name was Dave. Dave made about $54,000 a year. And every month, he would sit down with his spreadsheet, color-coded, beautiful, the whole thing, and he'd map out exactly where his money was going. And every month, about 2 weeks in, he'd be broke. And he'd look at me and say, I don't understand. I budgeted for everything. But here's what he wasn't seeing. His apartment was $1,550. His car payment was $420. His insurance, car and renters, was another $160. Before he bought a single grocery or paid a single utility, he was already at $2,130. That's more than half his take-home pay. Dave is not stupid. Dave is most people.
The thing nobody tells you about housing is that it's not just an expense. It's a tax on your entire financial life. Because when housing eats 40 or 50% of your income, every other decision gets distorted. You can't invest. You can't absorb surprises. You can't even think clearly about money because you're always in survival mode.
Chapter 2. The 1969 Lie. Here's something that genuinely bothers me. The 30% rule, that thing where people say you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on housing, that came from a government guideline in 1969. It was never a financial strategy. It was a limit, as in, don't spend more than this or you're in trouble. And we turned it into a goal. I think that's backwards. If you're spending 30% on housing, you're not doing well. You're at the edge of what's considered safe. The people who build wealth quickly, they're spending 20%, sometimes 15%. But nobody says that because it sounds extreme. Chapter 3. The opinion part. And I'm not backing away. Most finance content treats housing like a fixed cost, like the weather, something you just deal with. I think that's cowardly advice. Actually, no. Let me say that differently. I think it's safe advice. It doesn't challenge anyone. It doesn't ask you to do anything uncomfortable. It just says save more while ignoring the biggest line item in your budget. And I get it. Asking someone to change their housing feels invasive. But here's what I actually believe, and I'm not backing away from this. If you are serious about building your first $100,000 and you're spending more than 30% of your gross income on housing, you are fighting a battle you cannot win. Not because you're weak, because the math doesn't work. There's a reason I'm pushing on housing so hard, and I'm going to show you a number in a minute that might actually upset you.
But first, I need you to feel something.
You have two choices right now, and I need you to be honest with yourself. Not with me, with you.
Choice A. You want to build wealth, but you're not willing to change where you live, who you live with, or what you pay for shelter. You want the strategies to work inside your current housing situation. Choice B. You want to build wealth, and you're willing to make a temporary housing change, even an uncomfortable one, for 12 to 24 months, knowing it will permanently change your financial trajectory.
You can't pick both. Pick one.
Here's what I want you to do. In the comments, just put the number, 1 or 2. Don't explain it, just the number.
I read these, and I'll tell you right now, if you picked A, I'm not mad at you. I was A for years, but I want you to remember that choice in about 2 minutes, because I'm going to show you what A actually costs. Chapter 4. The Math That Made Me Sick. Okay, let's do real numbers. Let's say you're spending $2,000 a month on housing. Rent, utilities, insurance, parking, everything. And let's say you could get that down to $1,200. Not by living in a dangerous place, not by moving into a closet, but by getting a roommate, or moving to a slightly less expensive neighborhood, or renting a converted garage from someone. Something reasonable but less comfortable. That's $800 a month. $800 a month invested in an S&P 500 index fund averaging 10% returns, that's not a guarantee, but it's the historical average, becomes what? 1 year, $9,600 invested. After 10 years, that single change, just housing, gives you about $165,000. After 20 years, $610,000. After 30 years, over $1.8 million. And here's the part that made me feel sick when I calculated it for myself. I spent 5 years paying $800 more than I needed to for housing. 5 years. That cost me, in terms of future wealth, about $62,000 just in the first 5 years. And I wasn't even in a nice place. I was in a normal place. I just didn't want a roommate because I thought I was too old for that. I was 26. Chapter 5. The discomfort that wasn't real. This is where I have to be careful, because I don't want to sound like I'm telling you to live in misery. I'm not. But I learned something when I finally, and I mean finally, moved into a cheaper situation. I got a roommate. 2, actually. We shared a 3-bedroom house. My rent went from $1,600 to $850. And I thought I would hate it. I didn't. I actually liked it. There was always someone to talk to. We split groceries, the house was bigger than my apartment had been, and I had an extra $750 a month to invest. Here's what I realized. The discomfort I was afraid of, it wasn't real. It was a story I told myself about what it meant to be an adult. An adult has their own place. An adult doesn't have roommates. An adult pays $1,600 for a 1-bedroom with nice countertops. That story cost me tens of thousands of dollars. Chapter 6. The Self-Contradiction. The Floor. Okay, I need to say something that might sound like I'm walking back what I just said. I've been telling you to lower your housing costs, and I mean it.
But here's the part I wrestle with. There is a version of this that goes too far. I had a friend who moved into a basement apartment with no windows to save $300 a month, and she was miserable. Her mental health suffered. She stopped seeing people.
So I'm not saying live in a hole. I'm saying the fear we have about downsizing is usually bigger than the reality. But that doesn't mean every cheap housing situation is good. There's a floor. You need light. You need to feel safe. You need to not hate where you live.
The trick is finding the gap between what I'm spending now and what I'm afraid of. That gap is usually huge. That's where the money is.
Chapter 7. The $100,000 Shift. The first $100,000 is hard because you're fighting against gravity. Every dollar comes from you, your time, your energy, your decisions.
But here's what changed for me. Once I got my housing costs down, really down, not just within budget, I stopped feeling like I was pushing a boulder. I started feeling like I was walking on flat ground because I had margin. And margin changes everything.
Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, famously said that the first $100,000 is the hardest. Once you get that snowball rolling, momentum takes over. But getting to that point requires strategy, discipline, and most importantly, the willingness to do things that feel uncomfortable.
Remember that question I asked you to hold about why someone saves nothing at $65,000? The answer is not budgeting. It's housing creep. Every time your income goes up, your acceptable housing number goes up with it. And because housing is such a large expense, it swallows the raise before you even feel it. You get a $10,000 raise. You move to an $1,800 apartment instead of a $1,500 apartment. That's $3,600 a year. Almost half your raise. Gone. And you don't even notice because you're not doing the math. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you want to reach $100,000 faster, the single most powerful move is not a better investment. It's not a side hustle. It's lowering your housing cost temporarily to a level that feels almost embarrassing.
And that thing I mentioned earlier, the strategy most people won't do?
It's exactly that. Housing. Not optimization, not cutting $50 here and there, but a structural change to your biggest expense.
Most people won't do it because it feels like a step backward. It feels like admitting you're not as successful as you want to be.
But here's what I learned. That feeling, that embarrassment, it's the price of admission. You pay it now or you pay it later with years of slower progress. I paid it later. I don't recommend that. I've been thinking about Dave lately, my old roommate. He never changed his housing situation. He just kept budgeting harder. I wonder sometimes, what would have happened if he'd moved into that 3-bedroom house with me? He would have had an extra $700 a month. For 2 years, that's almost $17,000 invested. With growth, maybe $25,000. Not life-changing, but a real start. Here's my question for you, and I mean actually think about it. Not for me, for you. What's the housing number you're telling yourself you need to spend? And where did that number come from? If you're willing to be honest about that, genuinely honest, you might find $500 or $800 or $1,000 a month that you didn't know you had.
Drop the number you're spending on housing in the comments. Just the number. No story, no justification, just the number. And if you want, drop what you think you should be spending. I read these. I really do. Look, if you got something from this and you want to see more of the actual uncomfortable conversations about money, the ones most channels won't have, hit subscribe. Not because I'm building an audience, because I'm building a library of things I wish someone had told me when I was sitting in that car in February with $214. Next video,
I'm going to show you why that first 100K fights you so hard and why the next one practically happens on its own. The math surprised me. It might surprise you too.
Until then, take care of yourself. And maybe call that friend who needs a roommate. The first $100,000 is not about being perfect. It's about being willing to look stupid for 2 years so you don't have to be broke for 20.
I'm Jordan. See you in the next video.